Don't you think it's sad and odd that folk blame disease on heritage and genetics and not the proven fact that our food, water and air are being systematically poisoned? Never forget June 8th, 1967. US Naval Intelligence ship USS Liberty is attacked in international waters without warning by Israeli forces, killing 34 Americans and wounding 174. The Johnson administration immediately began concealing and altering evidence in their effort to downplay the attack, never seeking the prosecution of the guilty parties or otherwise attempting to seek justice for the victims. This was a war crime. This was in international waters. This should have been started a war against Israel. Instead, they continue to give them over $3 billion a year. A lie doesn't become truth. Wrong doesn't become right. And evil doesn't become good just because it's accepted by a majority. Big Pharma CEO, we're in business of shareholder profits, not helping the sick. Last July, Turning Pharmaceuticals CEO Martin Shkreli became a lightning rod for growing outrage over soaring prescription drug prices after he raised the price of a newly acquired drug from $13.50 to $750. They're absolute racketeering criminal mafias. But Shkreli, who earned the title the most hated man in America, is not the only one acquiring drugs currently on the market to raise the price and in turn rapidly drive up their stock price. J. Michael Pearson, the CEO of Valiant Pharmaceuticals, has enraged the internet after saying in a recent interview with MSNBC that his company responsibility is to its shareholders, not the customers who rely on the drugs to live. It's a criminal cartel mafia. The next stage of the engineered global economic reset has arrived. Ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. When discussing the fact that globalists often deliberately engineer economic crisis events, certain questions inevitably arise. The primary question being, why would the elites ruin a system that is already working in their favour? The answer is in some ways complicated because there are multiple factors that motivate the globalists to do the thing they do. However, before we get into explanations, we have to understand that this kind of question is rooted in false assumptions, not logic. The first assumption people make is that the current system is the ideal globalist system. It's not even close. When studying globalist literature and white papers, from Aldous Huxley's Brave New World to H.G. Wells' book The New World Order and his little-known film Things to Come, to Manly P. Hall's collection of writings titled The All-Seeing Eye, to Carol Quigley's Tragedy and Hope, to the Club of Rome documents, to Zbigniew Brzezinski's Between Two Ages, to former UN Director Robert Mueller's Good Morning World documents, to Henry Kissinger's Assembly of a New World Order, to the IMF and UN's Agenda 2030, to nearly every document on globalization that is published by the Council on Foreign Relations, we see a rather blatant end global described. To summarise, for at least the past century, the globalists have been pushing to turn one world system that is not covert but overt. They want consciousness, public acceptance of a completely centralised global economic system, a single global currency, a one world government and a one world religion, though that particular issue will require an entirely separate article. Links in description if you want to read the full article. And this is why they will never, ever let us leave the EU. European central banks say it needs Britain in the EU or Euro could go under. The chief of the European Central Bank has come close to begging Britain to stay in the European Union, saying a Brexit will threaten Eurozone recovery. There is no Eurozone recovery. A Remain vote would be the best for the 28-member bloc, according to boss Mario Draghi, adding a Brexit being a loss of to the single market. The bank heads said Britain also stands to gain from staying in the Union. Yeah, of course it does. Speaking at the bank's policy-setting meeting yesterday, he said the ECB has a view whereby the UK should remain in the European Union because the European Union will benefit from its presence, and we will believe the UK too will benefit from staying in the European Union. They are not going to let us leave. Smart motorway speed cameras raking 536 million in fines from variable speed limits. UK drivers have landed them speeding fines for being caught out by sudden drops in speed limits on smart motorways. And that's been one of the plans all along. Stop them going on the roads. Variable speed zones on smart motorways have cost drivers in the UK up to £526 million in fines since they were first introduced in 2013. These variable speed zones have caught out 210,538 drivers exceeding the speed limit since they were installed. In these zones, speeds can drop from 70 to as little as 20 in minutes. It is now being estimated that the number of fines will rise even further, with more variable speed zones planned across the UK as part of a smart motorway scheme. Whenever you hear the word smart, it's code word for we're going to screw you. Having said that, lemon water first. Speed camera loophole exposed. You want to read the full article? It's in the description. Magistrates' courts could grind to a halt if thousands of motorists exploit a legal loophole unwittingly exposed by a Welsh driver. Magistrates had no choice but to find Philip Dennis of Whitford, Flintshire, not guilty of speeding when his case was heard on Thursday. He had omitted to sign the standard form which is sent out to owners of each vehicle caught by a speed camera, and Mould magistrates said they couldn't accept the form as evidence. That's because they need you to give your consent, say yes, fine me, give me points, lock me up. And if they don't have your consent, they can't touch you. Police have no power to compel owners to sign the form and have been expecting someone to spot the loophole. Yesterday, the Association of British Drivers, representing about 2,500 motorists, predicted drivers would soon get wind of the court case. Motorists are always very quick to seek any way to avoid paying for their speeding ticket, particularly when they've been caught by cameras, because they resent very much the way the camera operates, says spokesman Tony Vickers. The cameras have very much reduced public's respect for the police and local authorities. People are only too glad to find a way to beat the system. He said motorists who receive a speeding ticket after being caught on camera could opt to have their case heard in court rather than pay the fine without quibble. If a lot of people take up this option, it will have another side effect, which will be to clog up the magistrates' courts with hundreds and of thousands of motorists all trying to avoid paying the fine. The implications for the legal system are interesting, to say the least. Senior doctors accuse government of deliberately underfunding NHS to accelerate privatisation plans. The government is deliberately underfunding the NHS in an attempt to speed up the plans to privatise the health service, senior doctors have said. Members of the British Medical Association accused Theresa May and Jeremy of the health secretary of consistently creating a crisis in the NHS hospital while scapegoating doctors to distract the public from underfunded services under severe and intense strain. This is in order to accelerate the transformation plans for private sector takeover of Healthcare England, said the motion passed by representatives at the union's annual representative meeting in Bournemouth. Dr. Chad Nagpal, the incoming BMA chair, said the government's policy is deliberately it does not need to be challenged. The government speaks a new investment, but it in the same breath asks to make £3 of efficiency savings for every £1 spent. He said, adding, in the name of safety and quality, austerity and savage cuts have to stop. The Department of Health rejected the claim, saying government funding for the NHS was at record levels, and the motion approved by the BMA sadly had no relationship with reality. No, you wankers have got no relationship to reality. Doctors voted in favour of the motion as it was revealed the government is pushing forward with plans to sell off the NHS staffing agency that employ more than 90,000 people, saving the health service 70 million a year. Don't give me any bullshit about saving, because what happens whenever they sell these things off, it goes through the roof and the service is shit. The agency's NHS professionals supplies staff more cheaply than private firms. It is a private limited company owned by the Department of Health. Fifth Court in Italy ruled cell phones cause brain tumours and determined it as an occupational disease. 5 courts in Italy, cell phones cause brain tumours and determined it an occupational disease. On the 30th of January 2019, an Italian court in the city of Monza, Italy, ruled that the acoustic neuroman brain tumour of an airport employee was caused by exposure to the radiation from a cell phone he used for over 10 years for his work. The court determined that the tumour has permanently incapacitated him and ruled it to be an occupational disease. This is the 4th case in which the court in Italy determined that an acoustic neuroma type brain tumour was caused by a cell phone, and the 5th court to make such rulings as is in the first court case. The court decision was appealed and later confirmed by Italy's Supreme Court. A summary of the 4 cases is in the bottom of this article. The importance of this decision is not only that it is another Italian court decision that establishes the link between brain tumours and exposure to radio frequency microwave radiation that is emitted from cell phones, but also by recognising that it is exposure to electromagnetic radiation, EMR, was necessary for the purpose of work. The acoustic neurotumour may be considered an occupational disease. Now, you've got that information, but think this, and I say to others all the time, because you forever see them having the phones in the back pockets, that will sterilise you. Even worse, I see them tucking the phones into the bras. That will give you breast cancer. Not if, not maybe, it will. Archbishop's computer contained over 100,000 child porn files. More than 100,000 child porn videos and photos have been found on the computer of former Archbishop Joseph Wezalski, who is also accused of raping numerous children in the Dominican Republic and Poland. Wezalski, currently under house arrest in Vatican, is one of the highest-ranking church officials to be accused of sexually abusing children during the Catholic Church's widespread and costly sexual abuse scandal. The videos and photos of child pornography were stored on a computer in the office at the Holy See diplomatic compound in the Dominican Republic, where Wezalski served as papal nuncio in Santo Domingo. Nuncio. After being publicly accused of procuring child prostitution last year, Wezalski was secretly removed from his post as papal unico in Santo Domingo by Vatican officials, hoping to avoid an embarrassing public prosecution. Authorities in the Dominican Republic have been calling for Wezalski's extradition. A court there has opened a case against the former Vatican ambassador, and the Attorney General wants the criminally charged Wezalski. Officials in Poland, Wezalski, country of origin, and where he has also been accused of sexually abusing children, are also calling for his extradition. According to Vatican detectives, some of the horrors found on the Archbishop's computer included around 160 videos showing teenage boys forced to perform sexual acts on themselves and on adults, and more than 86,000 pornographic photos which were methodically archived in several category-based folders. Investigators said that at least another 45,000 pictures were deleted, while even more child pornography was found on the laptop Wezalski used during his trips abroad. Late last month, Wachowski was placed under house arrest at the Vatican in response to popular outrage after reports began to circulate that the accused child rapist was free to wander the streets of Rome nearly a year after being secretly recalled from the Dominican Republic by the Vatican in order to avoid criminal prosecution there. Vatican authorities claim they are now investigating whether Wachowski sexually abused children while serving in other posts during his bullshit. Previously, he served in South Africa, Costa Rica, Japan, Switzerland, India and Denmark. Wachowski has been charged with sexually abusing minors and child porn possession. If convicted, Wachowski faces 12 years in jail. His trial is expected to start in January. Update. Wachowski died 27th of August 2015 while living in the Vatican under house arrest. He was never prosecuted for his crimes. Protected by the Vatican because they're a paedophile satanic organisation. Things your oncologist isn't warning you about: chemotherapy and radiation. Cancer is big business. No doubt about it, but did you know that the treatment your doctors order could actually increase the likelihood that you will become a repeat customer? Conventional cancer treatments such as chemotherapy and radiation actually promote cancer. Yes, you read that correctly. They promote cancer. Cancer is increasingly become a survivable disease, yet the treatment caused considerably collateral damage, including initiating new secondary cancers. Second cancers are cancers unrelated to the original cancer, which can be triggered by the very same imbalance or cancer-causing agents that led to the first cancer. In fact, doctors sometimes refer to the risk of a second cancer as friendly fire. That is treatment for one cancer resulting in the initiation of a second cancer. How in God's name could any doctor fail to mention to a patient the possible second cancers can be created by the very cancer treatment they are administering? Every oncologist wants suing. If they haven't told you the truth, they want suing. How long has it been known that chemotherapy and radiation can lead to second cancers? The link between chemotherapy and radiation and the development of second cancers has been known for decades. Even the American Cancer Society acknowledges that chemotherapy and radiotherapy are carcinogens and may increase risk for developing a second cancer, and that risk is higher when both therapies are given together. Depopulation. Don't listen to the Tory leader contenders. There will be no economy boost unless we accept the EU's terms on Brexit. Don't talk shit, you twathead. However, the new Prime Minister is they won't be able to change the economic situation they inherit. Instead, they'll have to play that hand of cards as it is currently exists, rather than throwing them back and asking for another. This has been the weekend where the Tory hopefuls have set out their stalls. Change the VAT system, don't pay the EU its divorce settlement until there is a trade deal, cut the rate of student loans, that's a sensible one, shut down Parliament. To spoil the fun, let's look at the practicalities, what the new Prime Minister will face after he or she is in place. Here are the top 5 negotiated ones. Yeah, they're all sellout bastards, the lot of them. Facebook bans Natural News. Health Ranger responds with message for humanity. Natural News has been deplatformed by Facebook. Authoritarian tyranny accelerates. The views and opinions expressed in the video do not necessarily represent the views of Brighton or its affiliates. So there's a video if you want to see the video, link in description. The UK has 9 out of 10 poorest regions in North Europe. One of the richest countries in the world has one of the 9 out of 10 of the most poorest regions. Let that sink in. The UK has 9 out of the 10 poorest, not just one, 9 out of the 10 poorest regions in Northern Europe, with suggestion that the rapid industrial decline brought about under Thatcher is chiefly responsible for creating pockets of poverty in one of the world's richest economies. West Wales, Durham, Teesside, Tees Valley, South Yorkshire, Northern Ireland all rank highly as the poorest areas in Europe in a report by inequality briefing. The report notes that despite Britain having a similar economic makeup to its Northern European counterparts, it is far more unequal country. Inner London ranked as the richest area in Northern Europe in the study, but it was alone in the top of 10 richest list. Meanwhile, 9 areas in the UK entered into the top 10 poorest, and Hainaut in Belgium is the lone exception. Other research carried out by Inequality Briefing has found that the gap between the richest and poorest region in the UK in terms of disposable income is the widest in the EU. The findings reveal that the UK is highly dependent on London and its environs, with just one British region other than the capital, the South East London of England, having a GDP per capita in excess of the EU 15 average, meaning that just 27% of the UK population live in regions wealthier than the EU average and are far catching up with the richer parts on the EU. The UK's poorest regions have fallen further behind. Number of children in absolute poverty across UK hits 3.7 million after an increase of 200,000 in a year. This is what your New World Order looks like. The number of children living in absolute poverty, as it says, is 3. Yeah. New government data shows that while the rate of absolute child poverty had been gradually falling since 2012, it is now rising again. The figures will come as an embarrassment for ministers who last year responded to a rise in relative poverty by highlighting that absolute poverty rates, their preferred measure, had fallen. Campaigners said the main drivers in the increase were cuts to benefits and tax credits, which have hit working families with more than 2 children particularly hard. The figures show that among children in poverty, there has been a rise in those who live in the working families, up from 69% to 72% in a year. There has also been an increase in the risk of poverty for children in larger families, with the number of households with 3 or more children up from 33% in 2012 to 43%. Overall, across the whole population, 100,000 more people are living in absolute poverty, with the figure now standing at 12.5 million. Shadow Work and Punishment Secretary Margaret Greenwood said the figures highlighted the devastating impact of austerity on families and across the country. The government must wake up to the figures, end the benefit freeze and stop the rollout of universal credit, which is punishing people into poverty. She added, research carried out by the Child Poverty Action Group to coincide with the publication of the figures found that the 4-year freeze on child benefit alone would lead to average losses of $240 a year per family with children. Alison Garnham, Chief Executive of the charity, said despite high unemployment, today's figures reveal that 70% of children living under the poverty line have at least one parent in work. That is not an economy that is working for everyone. Landmark study links Tory austerity to 120,000 deaths. The Conservatives have been accused of economic murder for austerity policies, which a new study suggests have caused 120,000 deaths. The paper found that there were 45,000 more deaths in the first 4 years of Tory-led efficiencies than would have been expected in funding that had stayed at the present levels. On this trajectory, that could rise to nearly 200,000 excess deaths by the end of 2020, even with the extra funding that has been earmarked for public sector services this year. Real term funding, the health and social care fell under the Conservative-led coalition government in 2010. And the researchers conclude this may have produced this substantial increase in deaths. The paper identified that mortality rates in the UK had declined steadily from 2001 to 2010, but this reversed sharply with the death rate growing again after austerity came in. From this reversal, the authors identified that 45,368 extra deaths occurred between 2010 and 2014 than would have been expected, although it stopped short of calling them avoidable. Based on those trends, it predicts the next 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, would account for 152,141 deaths, 100 a day, finding which one of those authors linked to the economic murder. The government began relaxing austerity measures, with Year announcing at the end of its cap on public sector pay rise and announcing an extra 1.3 billion for social care in the spring budget. Over 3 years, the additional funding for social care is expected to reach 2 billion, which Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said was patching up a small part of the damage wrought by 4.6 billion in cuts. DWP accused of rewarding failure after companies given 630 million for more disability benefit tests. Private companies will be given around 630 million of government money, no, our money, in the next 2 years to test people claiming disability benefits, despite ongoing concerns about the flawed medical assessment process. Ministers of the Department of Work and Pensions have been accused of rewarding failure after 2 companies that currently determine who gets personal independence payments and employment support allowance had their contracts extended. They should be banned, and the ministers that's done that should be in jail. Crystal meth found at Home Office headquarters as Sajid Javid boasts about sniffer dog prowess. When Sajid Javid was announced as Home Secretary last month, he lost no time in posing with a sniffer dog and promising to get tough on drugs. Cannabis isn't a drug, by the way. It appears the message did not make it around his department. Police were called to the Home Office after a stash of crystal meth and a smoking pipe were found in a disabled toilet just 4 days after Mr. Javid took over. What a shock. Not really. The highly addictive Class A was first spotted by a security guard at the department's headquarters in Westminster on May 3rd, the Sunday Mirror reports. Embarrassingly, the find came on the same day Mr. Javid, who took over from Amber Rudd on April 30th, posted a picture of himself with a force officer and a sniffer dog at Heathrow Airport. He tweeted, "We have impressive 4-legged friends helping to sniff out drugs, cash and illicit goods. Go, Trigger." It was the 3rd discovery of its kind in 6 months in the department, which is responsible for overseeing the UK's drug policies. In April, cocaine was found in the building, which itself followed another batch of crystal meth being discovered in December. Yet police have not initiated a full investigation, with government officials unable to say why. Because they did it, they say, "No, don't investigate us." Child sex abuser Bill Kennelly complains to Dial. Bill Kennelly, a convicted child sex abuser, has sent a letter of complaint from his prison cell to the, whatever that is, claiming that 4 TDs abused Dial privilege in a statement they made about him. A former sports coach and political activist, Kennelly was jailed for 14 years in 2016 for indecently assaulting 10 boys. In a handwritten letter from the Midlands prison in Portloos, he said Brendan Howlin, the leader of the Labour Party, who praised Kennelly's victim for their bravery and persistence in securing his conviction, had not attended the trial. Just trying to get out of it any way they can. After the referendum, the people, not Parliament, are sovereign. The most dangerous threat to democracy comes from the passive electorate. The sovereignty of Parliament, the notion that Parliament, untrammeled, can enact any law it chooses, lies at the heart of a constitution. Indeed, in the important case that went before the Supreme Court this week, both sides have used the concept in support of their case. The appellant argue that only a sovereign parliament can trigger Article 50, the legal instrument enabling Britain to leave the EU, which of course is never going to happen. The government, however, claims that Article 50 can be triggered through prerogative powers, and that had Parliament wished to constrain these powers, it could have done so, but it has chosen to exercise the sovereignty by not doing so. Tory leadership to be decided by a drug test. Yeah. But now what I want you to notice here is you've got both of them smoking. So that's saying it's marijuana, cannabis, when that's not a drug. But that's what they're trying to subliminally put and print into your head. With several leadership contenders admitting that they've taken illegal substances, the Conservative Party have decided to bite the bullet and choose the next Prime Minister on their ability to take copious amounts of drugs. The Ulster Fry understands that Boris Johnson and Michael Gove are currently holed up in a bedsit in Camden, where they'll smoke immense quantities of dope before undergoing a series of drug-fueled challenges to see who's the biggest stoner. They have to show that they can still roll a joint one-handed after numerous hits on the Tory party's official bong, explains LCD, the MP for Little Snorting. Jeremy Corbyn's £3 million state-funded salary and pension revealed. Oh, he's one of hers. Really? Really? Jeremy Corbyn has made more than £3 million from the state in the past 30 years, according to official records. The Labour leader has made more than £1.5 million in salary as an MP and will benefit from a generous £1.6 million pension when he retires. A senior backbench Labour MP said the scale of his earnings was remarkable in the wake of Mr Corbyn's criticism of David Cameron over his own tax affairs. Glyphosate found in urine of 93% of Americans tested. Glyphosate, the most used herbicide in the world, has been found in the urine of 93% of the American public during a unique testing project that started in 2015. Glyphosate, labelled a probable human carcinogen by the World Health Organization, Cancer Agency IARC in 2015, has now been revealed to be ubiquitous in the first ever comprehensive and validated LCMS testing project to be carried out in America. The real cost of giving birth, $40 to hold my newborn baby. Holding your newborn baby for the first time is said to be one of life's most precious moments. But how would you feel if you were charged for the privilege? That was the experience of Lydia and Ryan Grassley, whose baby Samuel was delivered by cesarean section at a hospital in Utah in the US on 4th September. Absolutely ridiculous. Brussels becomes first major city to halt 5G due to health effects. The people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health I can sell for profit. The facts. A Belgian government minister has announced that Brussels is halting its 5G plan due to its health effects. Reflected on, should we agree to be guinea pigs on technology that has not been safely tested? So the British government said, we're going to test it on our guinea pigs because we don't give a shit. A Belgian government minister has announced that Brussels is halting the 5G due to health effects. The statement was made by Céline Fremalt, the minister of the government of the Brussels capital region, responsible for housing, quality of life, environment and energy, for the interview last Friday with Echo Metro. Tories go nose to nose. Former line here. 8 out of 11 contenders admit drug past but still have a crack at the leadership. Clarkson tweet is wrapped by police. Uganda gets a date on Love Island. Bravely on the art of dating an A-lister. Daily Fail. After cocaine revelations, new blows as Rudd backs Hunt, but Battle PM contender insists he's ready to lead Gove. I fight on undaunted. Got a secret to keeping marriage fresh and an intimacy coach. Well, aye, still a thrill. The chase is back on. Gove fights back as drug row threatens leadership bid. Environment Secretary says taking cocaine was a profound mistake and he was lucky not to be jailed. Rival contender Javid condemns middle-class drug takers, but Gove key support stays loyal. Conservative leadership race officials begin today when candidates have to register. Johnson pulls ahead with more support from senior MPs while Hunt is criticised on abortion. Quitting work may have saved my life. How I beat burnout. Beware of the small dog, not fair to blame them for rising attacks. How night owls can become early birds. Please, no gloating over the charge UK split. The Times. Britain is best in Europe for 1 billion unicorn tech startups. Cove police for second chance over cocaine use. Yeah, you want some more cocaine. Leadership hopeful accused of double standards. Rudd backs Hunt in blow to Johnson's campaign. Mirror. Gove, the cocaine hypocrite, must quit. Baroness Wolsey demands that he pulls out of PM race. The Guardian. Gove's bid for number 10 on the brink of after drugs admission. MRI scans trailed as tests for prostate cancer. MI5 revealed new plan to flag terror suspects. Riot police clash with protesters in Hong Kong. This Telegraph. Johnson to cut income tax bills for millions. Tory leadership frontrunner reveals plan to lift the higher rate threshold to 80,000. Beleaguered Groves suffers fresh blow to leadership hopes as Rudd endorses Hunt. Prostate scan will give men peace of mind. Terrorists stockpiled explosives in London. Ballot stars unheralded outlining a tribute to 14. New orders fuel hopes for British steel buyers. Drivers can no longer escape fines in Europe. Express. Boris vowed not to pay 39 billion stuns EU. Macron aide says failure to stump up cash will be sovereign debt default. Oh, piss off. Killing Eve Jodie. Why winning that role was an headache. Wasted paper. Clarkson fatal crash. Fury delayed motor gob moans as driver dies. Never liked that bloke. The Scum. Boozier Shire charity jaunt. Full time. Married Prem refs and the whole island's party girls. FT. Taxing Times. G20 eyes hike for big tech. Renault pledged to block Nissan shake-up rolls uneasy alliance. Governance overhaul in peril. French group at ops out. Yeah. Home Office visor algorithm creates real risk of discrimination, says lawyers. Cocaine admission. Yeah, that's just the same shit. Well, as you can see, and you all know, everyone in Parliament are nothing but a bunch of thieving criminals, drug-taking criminals at that. And to actually vote for them, you've got to be crazy. You're voting for a bunch of crooks who are going to make your life worse. But, you know, you do whatever you feel you need to do. Don't, if you are going to vote, don't vote for a major party. Vote for an independent, because the major parties have been having a party at our expense for far too long now. Let's see if we can change that.